start. Okay, our first order of business is reviewing and accepting the minutes from 12/11/19.
I'll make the motion that we accept the minutes from 12/11/19.
Second. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay,
Was that Bill or was that seconded?
I second.
Oh, I made the motion, Bill made the
Yes, I
second.
did, yeah.
Perfect, okay. All set, okay, on to new business. The budget committee has been meeting with the department heads before we get into the budget process, discussing the revenues and expenses, as well as looking forward into the next year. And the goal is for these meetings to help the full budget process go more smoothly by meeting beforehand. And today on the docket, we have Rick Garrett? Gate, oh, I'm sorry. Rick Gate from wastewater sewer plant as a supervisor.
So, any chance that we can flip-flop them? I think that Rick's comments are gonna take longer than the chief's.
Yep.
I think
That's fine.
Would that be okay?
Yes, yes.
then
Oh, I'm going first?
you're going first.
Oh, I'm not prepared.
Sit down. I was gonna suggest that, because I think that's to take a long time.
Well, it only makes sense for the chief is here for a supplementary.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
So I kind of threw this together for you guys. This, in a perfect world, this is where I feel the police department should be.
Sitting on Main Street.
It was stormy up at the end of it.
How did
Nice
that
picture though.
So if you go through that, you'll see what I'm asking for, and on every increase, I mean, I understand, this is an unrealistic budget, because it's like a 37% budget increase to get us to where we need to be. And the biggest increase is the addition of 2 full-time officers. And I will harp on the 2 full-time officers, basically because we have so many hours a week right now that are going uncovered, that I feel it's a liability for the town, and it's a safety hazard. Most of you guys, probably all you guys have lived in Wiscasset longer than I have. I've been a resident now since July, and I've worked here for a year and a half. Other than that, I just know what I've heard on the radio from Waldeboro. But we do have calls all hours of the night. We've had business get broken into, we've had burglaries, we've had domestic calls. When I first started, we had the standoff situation over there on Page Avenue. And that happened 30 minutes after my 2 o'clock guy got off duty. So there is a need for the 24/7 coverage. The voters approved the 24/7 coverage. However, when they approved that, they approved it with 3 full-time officers and part-timers. My part-time staff all have full-time jobs elsewhere. Right now, out of the 62 hours a week that I count on part-timers to work, I get about 16 hours coverage, which means the other hours are either filled with overtime or don't get covered and Lincoln County covers. I know last year, there was some talk last year about leaving the overnight uncovered because the county was putting on additional staff to help absorb that. Well, I talked to the chief deputy from the county the other day, and that really wasn't why they added that second overnight patrol with the county. He told me that they relied on Wiscasset PD and Damerscott PD to back them up in Dresden and on Westwood Island and down in Bristol and Newcastle. Well, when Damerscott and Wiscasset started being short-staffed on the overnights, that left their one guy working with no backup. So that's why the sheriff's office fought for that second overnight, was just for their officer safety and their backup, not to cover calls in Wiscasset and Damerscott. Now, I've said it before and I'll say it again, the sheriff's office will support us 110%, but they do not want to take calls in Wiscasset. The guys sitting in the office may say that, but the guys on the road do not want to take calls in Wiscasset. Now, if you go back, I went back to 2015. Since 2015, Wiscasset has hired 11 full-time police officers.
Wow.
The academy values a full-time officer at $40,000. So, for instance, Jonathan Barnes just graduated the academy. He's already looking for employment elsewhere. He's been right up front about it. When he goes, whoever hires him will pay us $40,000. So the academy set those standards and those guidelines to help out the small municipalities that couldn't compete with the bigger agencies with pay-wise, benefit-wise. So that's what saves us. But I feel like at some point, the town needs to recognize 11 full-time officers. I mean, in 2018, when I came, there was a whole new staff. I mean, when I came, there was one sergeant, and before long, I mean, it was all brand new people. Right now, everybody in Wiscasset PD has. I mean, I'm the senior guy with a year and a half. Everybody else is new. So within the past year. Now, I don't want to lose any of them, and I know we have contract negotiations coming up. It doesn't do any good to compare numbers with Camden PD, Rockport PD, Thomaston PD. So what I did is I just took the municipalities in Lincoln County. The 4 municipalities, there's Wiscasset, Damerscott, Waldoboro, and Booth Bay Harbor. Out of those 4 agencies, Wiscasset has the smallest budget, almost in half to some of the budgets. I think the biggest department is Waldoboro with 7 officers, and then Booth Bay Harbor has 6, Damerscott has 5, and Wiscasset has 3. That's not counting the SRO, because they don't work the road. Out of those, if you go to the back of the handout, and I apologize for jumping around in the handout, but if you go to page 10, you'll see the calls for service. And Waldoboro had the most calls with just over 6,500 calls. Then Booth Bay Harbor with 3,500. Underneath that, I have the arrests. Even though we are the smallest department, we have the highest number of arrests of any municipality in Lincoln County, other than the sheriff's office. And we're ahead of Waldoboro by 50 arrests. Now I don't want that to look negative on those agencies, but I guarantee you, right now Wiscasset is making a name for itself with OUI arrests. We are getting a lot of OUI arrests. So much so that the state police have been down here on several different occasions doing OUI details. And it's like I mentioned to Kim earlier, Kim asked me the question. It isn't that the crime rate is going up or anything's going up, it's just that there's been inconsistent enforcement in Wiscasset. People do what they want to do when they want to do it, and unfortunately public safety takes the hit with that. So I know there's other efforts coming down with the state police coming down here to do some extra OUI details and drug details. The other thing, not just the officers, but the administrative assistant. I listed out the duties or the expectations of the administrative assistant starting on page 3. Since 2015, we've had 3 part-time administrative assistants. Last year, I was able to increase her hours from 25 hours to 32 hours. There's still not enough time for her to do what needs to be done. If you look at the bottom of page 3 where it starts, where her duties start, and it goes almost to the bottom of page 4, and I'm sure I've missed some. But not only does she do the administrative stuff for the PD, she also does it for the harbor master and the shellfish. She's kind of like the backbone of the PD. The guys come in, they write reports. If it wasn't for her, she's kind of like the mother in the home. She kind of keeps everything together, and her role is essential in the police department. Some of the increases that you'll see in the lines, some of those increases are for the addition of the 2 officers. But the other increases are some, if I could just point out, on the bottom of page 4, 30-08, the contracted services. The only thing we budgeted in last year's budget for contracts was the $3,700. Because we really didn't know all these other, we just budgeted for Axon. We didn't know that TriTech was gonna be $6,300. The Department of Labor compliance, I mean, that's $1,300 a year. Our required licenses, I didn't know that we had to have a license to run our radios and stuff through Lincoln County, so that's $300. So that line is way under budget. The fuel line doubled, went from 5,000 to 10,000. Well, it was 10,000, and last year with the bare bone budgets, I cut it down to 5,000. The reason I cut it down to 5,000 is because in January, when we were doing everything, we hadn't spent hardly any of that money. So I cut it in half. Well, in June, beginning of June, when we was coming into the budget, we got a bill from the bus garage for fuel from January to June. So I mean, I didn't have any idea that we were using that much fuel. So that's why I just put that back to where it was the year before. The cruisers, both of the cruisers that we have now, one has 94,000 miles, the other one has 106,000 miles. I think we were budgeting like $1,200 a year maintenance on that. We've already this year we've gone above and beyond the maintenance, the budgeted maintenance. So we're going to go over on those lines. I asked in the capital, I asked for 2 cruisers. The SUVs that we're running are $32,000 a piece. The all-wheel drive Dodge Chargers are the high 23, so $24,000. So I asked for 2 of the Dodge Chargers, and I don't know if I will get those, but if not,
I didn't see the cost of the charges in your budget. Is that part of the 597,000?
no, that's going to be that part of the capital, the 84,000 in the capital that I asked for. And I can get to that. The biggest increase in the police budget is the addition of the 2 officers. Now, like I said, I know in a perfect world this is how the police department should be run and how it should be staffed. But I also.
Question, Chief. I
Yep.
can see that you have, by putting the 2 new full-time officers on, you're gonna decrease the part-time. Does that include the overtime that was done there, taken into account and having the additional overtime?
Can you repeat that? I'm sorry. Which line are you talking?
When you mentioned here on page 3, 10-03 part-time, so you requested a increase from 56K to 23.4. Does that include even change for overtime? By covering shifts now, by adding 2 additional new officers?
I don't know if I'm understanding the question. I'm not.
Yeah, it shows the same as the previous year's budget. It's a different line. Overtime is 1010. She was wondering if overtime would go down because we'd have 2 more officers.
Theoretically, it should, but we would have people in the academy. The problem with overtime in the police department is not always covering shifts. Like Officer Barnes has been working a burglary, and he came in early yesterday, and he came in early today. He's working on a search warrant. So that's just kind of like investigative overtime. So it's kind of hard to, I mean, any of the overtime is kind of like an estimate. The biggest decrease there would be, for the part-timers, would be, I wouldn't be relying on them for the 62 hours a week. Even with, if you go back further, and this could be an eye-opener, if you go back to the attachments at the back of the page, and they're not numbered, but the third one in from the last, the schedule, that is, and I just put that in there for an example, that's the February schedule. Everything that's highlighted in yellow is what is considered part-time shifts. And out of that, we're getting about 16 hours coverage a week. So that's how much non-coverage we're supplying to the town. And my concern with that is that is when the commercial burglaries are happening. They know when they drive by that if there's two cruisers out there, that nobody's working. So, but even with the addition of 2 full-time officers, if you go to the back of the page, the back page, the top one shows it with 5 officers, working with 5 officers. And even then, there's still one shift that we would rely on part-timers for. Now, the bottom one is currently what we rely on part-timers for. That's basically just a breakdown of the full schedule. Now, I know that 37% increase is unlikely. Do I think it's needed? Yes. Do I want my taxes to go up? No. But I don't really know how to resolve it without bringing in additional revenue or however the town works to generate revenue. But what I did do, knowing that this 37% is maybe not going to happen, I went through with Bernice and I did two additional budgets, and one of them is with no addition of staff, just the way we are now, just keep going, but bringing the lines up to where I feel they fell for last year, and bringing my administrative assistant up to 40 hours, and that's where I come out. If you keep everything the way it is now, just bring the budget lines up to where they are, you're looking at 11.21% increase. The town manager, when I told the town manager that, he asked me to run it with adding just 1 officer, and I did that, and that comes out to a 24-point-something% increase. So bottom line, minimum, I guess I'd be asking for 11% increase, and that's really not helping me out staff-wise, and we'll just keep doing what we're doing. My concern is 2019 was the first year since 2015 that we didn't hire any full-time staff. Everybody stayed. I don't think that's going to be the case for 2020. I think there's going to be some staff turnover just because of contract negotiations and just the nature of police work. Just for an example, my sergeant went on vacation. He's been working overtime while John's in the academy. I came out 2 weeks ago. I came out on a Sunday to work his night shift so he could be on vacation. I went to work at 4 o'clock Sunday afternoon. I did not get out till 4 o'clock Monday afternoon. So I ended up doing it 24 hours. Now I tried to go home because I live in town. I tried to go home at 2 o'clock to take a break, and I got called back out at 3 and just stayed out. So now people can only do that for so long before they start making mistakes, things start happening. And I don't want to see that happen. It's hard for me to hold the part-timers accountable. I have a part-timer that gives me 10 hours a week on Sunday. He works day shift every Sunday. It's hard for me to hold him to the same level of standards that I hold a full-timer to Because if I hold this, and I'm not saying he doesn't do this already, but if I hold him, if I tell him, look, I want you stopping 3 cars an hour, I want you writing tickets, I want you doing that, he's gonna go. Yeah,
This one,
yeah,
the yellow is part-time,
yeah.
and you, am I about right that every week here is about 45 hours that are being covered, about?
It should be 62.
They want 11 hour shifts?
It should be 2 AM to 8 AM, which is 6 hours times 7, which is 40.
Okay, this says 2
42.
to 7.
And then you have the 10 hours Saturday and 10 hours Sunday.
And of that, about 16 is being covered.
Yes.
Okay, so one of my questions, just one of them, is what does a part-timer cost? Not in terms of what you're paying them per hour, but just to have them on your payroll.
For me to hire a part-timer, it costs me about $1,500 to outfit them and buy them a vest. I don't do polygraphs or psychological tests on part-timers because that's about another $1,000. And frankly, I've hired part-timers that have not worked. I've got a part-timer that I hired in July. I got him a uniform, bought him a vest, and he has yet to come in and complete his FTO. So,
I would hope you terminated the service.
well, he called me today. It's in the works. But
I mean, you ought to have, even though there are, I know this really isn't budget committee related, but even though they're part-timer, they should still have some type of probationary period. If they don't do
right.
X and say a certain amount.
Well, where I find myself begging for part-timers, and then I find myself trying to do whatever I can do to keep the part-timers because I need the coverage.
And then a full-timer is 35 hours a week? Is that what I'm, did
40.
I see that in here, 40?
Yeah, full-time is 40 hours a week.
Okay,
They work 4 10s.
okay.
And the thing with the part-timers as well, the academy has been talking for the last couple of years, ever since a part-time officer. The academy revamped the whole part-time pre-service since the shooting in Waldoboro back, I don't know, 10, 12 years ago now. The academy is making a move to eliminate part-timers working by themselves. You can use a part-timer only when they're working alongside a full-time officer. Now, some agencies have done away with part-timers altogether because of the liability. Other agencies, like the Lincoln County Sheriff's Office, they use part-timers, but they don't work alone. They work with a full-time officer.
Okay, then, so if you hired 2, so you're adding 80 hours a week. So
Yeah.
that would more than cover the yellow marked out with 60 some hours, right?
Yes and no. If you look at the schedule, the very last page, the top one is with the addition of 2 officers. The way that works is, in the past month, we've had 2 officers in the department assaulted in the last month. And around the state, you can see the assaults on officers going up. Most agencies, every agency in Lincoln County, except for us, has 2 officers working from 8 o'clock at night till 2 in the morning. They have an overlap. They have one officer comes in at 4, works till 2 a.m., the second officer comes in at 8 and works till 6 a.m. So you have that double coverage during those high call times. So with that schedule, you still have 1 open shift that's part-time. So now if we go with the 24% increase with 1 officer, I don't know how yet I would make that schedule work, because by contract they work 4 10s, and so I would have to really look at how to make that work.
The cost for the 2 additional full-time officers, I haven't had a chance to look through all of
No,
this.
that's fine.
But Is everything in that number that we're looking at, I mean, all those sort of ancillary things that come with a full-time employee, insurance and
Yes.
all of that?
Yeah,
Everything is in there?
Everything's
It's not
in
in
there.
some, because I know
Nope.
Bernice sometimes
Insurance,
puts something else in another.
Yeah,
Well,
the
the-
insurance is.
The insurance is in the back. It's all included in the
In
end
your
price of
budget,
the
but
five.
she pulls it out then? for-
Doesn't go out anymore, it's not.
Oh, she no longer does?
It's in that end number. It's in the 596. It's not in the, like, if you look at the 10-02 on page 3, it says, I'm asking for an increase from 106,660 to 192. That's just for wages. That's just the wages. The insurance is
Okay.
back there with her other stuff.
Okay.
Now, I also did in the back, in the attachments, I did a 10-year capital plan. I did that last year, and don't think I got anything on the capital plan, so I had to revamp it for this year. And I know the mentality of some people, don't want things to change, and they don't see the need. I mean, granted, the cruisers look good when they're washed, but still, they got over 100,000 miles on them. And if I'm chasing somebody at 100 miles an hour, I don't want something falling off. You know, and I was even asked recently, or told recently, that people don't really expect somebody on duty 24 hours a day. And I disagreed with that. When somebody's in a crisis and they dial 911, they want a police officer there. So, I mean, I don't know what the solution is. I mean, I'm here as a department head, doing whatever the town wants me to do and allows me to do. I'm not throwing a hissy fit if I don't get my way. I'm not gonna say, okay, I'm quitting tomorrow if this doesn't happen. I mean, I will be here, even if I'm the last one standing, and do whatever it is you want me to do. I appreciate the opportunity to come in and talk to you, but I felt when I came here, and I still feel today, that nobody really has any true idea of what the police department does. Social media, we get hammered in social media. They say, oh, it must be a nice day, they had to get out of the office. I mean, as you can see by the numbers, we are out of the office. You'll see in our calls that we had just over 6,400 calls for service. Now, those are calls for service, that's everything we do. The total number for Wiscasset, if you include the calls that the county handled in Wiscasset, would put that closer to probably 8,000. The numbers that I ran in the system was it was like 7,400 calls, but that included Wiscasset and Lincoln County's calls in Wiscasset that they handled.
Whether you handled them or the county handled them, it was 8,000 calls.
Right, but the numbers you see in here is just what Wiscasset handled. For instance, the other night, Officer Barnes arrested a OUI. While he was at the jail processing that OUI, a domestic came in. Lincoln County responded to that domestic, and they made an arrest on that. Those numbers don't show up in my report. Those are Lincoln County numbers. So if we had that extra staff, these numbers would even be higher.
When you said earlier that the voters approved 2 full-time officers, was that last year?
No, I think that was back, and Kim, maybe you know, I think that was back in 2012 or 2013. Linda pulled it out for me, and because when I first started, I was frustrated that the voters approved 24/7 coverage, but the town wasn't giving me the resources to provide 24/7 coverage. So once I started researching that, Linda showed me where the voters approved 24/7 coverage with 3 full-time staff and part-timers. Now, the voters approved that because that's the way it was written up.
Was there a number attached? I mean, I know that the numbers would be kind of irrelevant in this day, because that was 8 years ago, but do you remember what the budget was that year?
I don't.
I just remember I was on the budget committee 12 years ago, and the budget was a lot higher than it is now. I mean, it's been cut a lot.
I believe, and that's why I think it's such a drastic increase, and I tried to put in one of the bullets that the reason for this 36.97% increase is because we have been so underfunded and bare bones. I mean, the only way I got to where I was last year is eliminating things and cutting things in half, like the fuel line, which now I'm trying to bring back. And so, I mean, I would encourage you, I mean, I know this is a lot, and I'm not giving you anything that I haven't given the select board. I gave them the same thing, so they have the same thing. And I just hope, you know, and I look forward to, you know, working with everybody to try to resolve.
This is a terrific report.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Just a couple of questions. In comparison to the other towns that you show here, are they all 24/7 coverage?
They are. Scotter is dealing with the same issues we are right now. They're short staffed, so every night they don't have anybody from like 2 to 6. Not every night. They were fully staffed for a while, so they're doing good, and they just lost an officer a week or so ago. So they're back struggling with that 24/7 coverage.
And do you feel that Wiscasset needs 24/7?
Absolutely.
Can you also explain to me how the relationship works with the county? I mean, how do you trade off calls, or how do they take calls and you don't take calls? How does that work? Is there any methodology?
No, right now, the way it's been since I started here, because we have been short-staffed since I started here, the lieutenant, the patrol administrator over there, and I talked, and if there's nobody on duty for Wiscasset, the county's taking calls. So right now, when Jonathan goes off duty at 2 o'clock, the county will draw a number for Wiscasset for police coverage. Now, I've been away from here. And the patrol sergeant over there gets our schedule, so he knows when we're short-staffed and when we're not. But the road guys don't always know. So when they get a call in Wiscasset, my phone starts ringing, and they're frustrated with me because they're coming to Wiscasset, and you know,
They may be in Jefferson, right?
Yeah.
Jefferson, Whitefield, wherever,
And
and they're coming to Wiscasset, and you know, and it strains the relationships. You know, I wasn't rude. I wasn't trying to be rude. I think I was a little short with the guy the last time he called. After the third time he called me, and I told him that your lieutenant has the schedule. He hasn't called me since.
Yeah.
And now that relationship between him and I are strained a little bit because I think he thought I was being rude to him.
Not to cut you short, but that's a situation that has no fault on yours, no fault on the officer that was going off shift for Wiscasset and county covered, say, from 2 to 6, or whatever it be. That, and if you're doing your part and passing on the scheduling to the lieutenant for Lincoln County, which the taxpayers in this community pay taxes too, they shouldn't be coming back at you.
Oh, and like I said, it's not the administration, it's the guys actually doing the work. Now, I, being a working chief.
They should be reporting back to their supervisor
Right.
and not calling you.
Right, well, that's been addressed. That's been addressed, and I don't get any phone calls anymore. But if you break down the calls, the just over 6,400 calls, if you break that down, that averages out to be 18 calls a day. Well, when you're only working, you know, all these calls generate reports.
Yeah.
You know, I cannot tell you how many times I've been in the middle of an investigation, and the biggest one was when the 2 vehicles got stolen from Wiscasset Ford, and I recovered them out in Michigan. Now, that was a pretty in-depth and fast-moving investigation, but in the meantime, I mean, I had to call my SRO out of the school to take calls so I could complete that investigation. I don't have that luxury anymore because he's now in the academy. And my guys don't have that luxury at all, because when they're working, there's no one else working. So they're trying to write their reports. I took a stack, and I'm not exaggerating, a stack that high of arrest reports to the DA's office today, because Jonathan's back. We had 196 arrests for the year. Jonathan was gone for 18 weeks of that in the academy. So he came back the end of November, and I think he made 18 arrests the month of December. So, but he's my OUI guy. His sister got killed on Christmas Eve 12 years ago by a drunk driver. So he has a passion for OUIs, and that's why our numbers are.
Big fan.
Chief, I have one question. It's my fault for, I wasn't paying attention. I was looking for something. You're talking about part-timers? Did I hear that they can't work alone?
The academy is making that move. The academy's been trying to do that for a couple of years. It's coming down the road, just nobody knows when.
Okay, so then there'd be no,
If they do that, it's gonna handicap a lot of municipalities
Yeah.
like Wiscasset.
then
who
you
rely
have
on it.
2 people on at one time.
Yeah.
Okay, that's my fault. I was looking at something at the same time and listening. Thank you.
Can I add to that or elaborate on that? Hopefully, if you hire a part-timer, for example, your sergeant, who is a former Maine State Police trooper, full-time police officer, went to the 18-week city academy. If he was to get done next year and decide he wanted to work part-time, he wouldn't fall under those same handicap rules.
He would,
So that handicap rule basically only responds to people who are under the 100-hour program,
Right.
which might be more hours now, but that's what it always used to be.
yes.
So you're talking about a true part-timer,
Yeah.
not somebody that may have been a former full-time police officer
Right.
for another department.
And I have one of those, Officer Hepner.
Yeah,
He's one of my part-timers. We call them blue pins. If you graduate the full-time academy, you're a blue pin. If you graduate the pre-service, you're a green pin. So that's how you differentiate the two. I can beg all I want. I know you guys are in a tough position. And I know the select board's in a tough position, and I just felt it was important for you guys to see and understand where I'm coming from as a department head, when I come to work every day and feeling like I'm behind the 8 ball, because, I know sooner or later when somebody calls and nobody shows up and something really bad happens, it's gonna look bad on everybody. And we can't say it's never gonna happen.
Would you say the turnover rate for the administrative assistant and all of the other officers, what would you attribute that to?
I think it's because, the administrative assistant, there's been 3 of them in the past 5 years. I believe Nicole came in 2017, and she's stayed. In 2015, there was one hired, 2016, there was one hired, and then 2017, Nicole came. Now, with those, they were 25-hour positions.
They just weren't.
Yeah, who wants to work 25? I guess if you're retired, you can do that. But the job, 196 arrests. You just can't do it on a 25-hour work week. And get everything together. There's videos, there's freedom of information. And Nicole is actually my evidence tech. Now, that evidence room over there when I started was a mess. Anybody could go in that evidence room. Anybody. And that's not supposed to be happening. Nicole went to evidence tech school. The whole evidence room had been inventoried, revamped. I don't even have access to the evidence room. Nicole is the one that has access to the evidence room. She is the administrative assistant. She's the evidence tech. She uploads all the crash reports to the state. She does all the paperwork. The list is in there. The PD could not function without her. And I would really like to get her to 40 hours. Because she just doesn't have enough time. And during that time, during the past year and a half, we've been redoing the PD. We redid the patrol, and we redid my office. But it's all good.
well, I'm going to tell you right now that public safety has my support 100%.
Thank you.
Well, the voters have spoken through the years very
Right.
strongly in that way
Yeah.
too. They want a full-time, police department. And they
I-
don't want the Lincoln County covering. They want Wiscasset to have their own police department.
I cannot tell you how many irate, upset people I had in my office the first 3 months I was here. And they were upset because of the way they were treated and the way their cases were handled. I've been dealing with, for the past year and a half, I've been dealing with a felony theft case that fell through the cracks because of turnover, and it just, something never got followed up on. And when I tried to fix it, I didn't have the video, I didn't have the stuff that was available back then. I tried to do what I could do, submitted it to the DA's office. The DA's office denied a complaint because too much time had gone by, and that's just one of them. But I will tell you, in the past year, I have not had one upset person. I take it back, I had one. I had one upset person that thought that an officer was rude to him. But other than that, I have not taken any. I think my guys are doing a good job. And I think that the PD is going in the right direction. And I just hope to stay on track with it and keep going that way.
So, one question, this chart that you have shows an increase of 2 officers, right?
The booklet, yeah.
Yeah. What would it look like if there was an increase of 1 full-time? And how would that help?
That's the one, I would have to play with the schedule to see how that would help. But it would increase the budget, the 24.91%. But I would have to play with the schedule. And fortunately, my guys are willing, my guys alter their schedule all the time to accommodate the PD for coverage. And to the point where, I mean, I'll be honest with you, I have some good friends that I haven't seen in months because I don't leave Wiscasset. And, but that's what it is.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And feel free, I mean, if you want to stop by the office, and if you have any questions, you know, I know I jumped around a lot, and I try to be detailed, but feel free to stop over anytime and check things out. All right. Thank you.
Very well done, thank you.
Thank you.
I'll stay right now. Oh, no, I don't have a fancy presentation like you. So I'm Rick Gates, I'm the former superintendent, and this is Robert Lally, who is taking my place starting this week. The reason I'm here is because I put most of the budget together, and I've gone through it with Robert. What I am doing now is I'm consulting down at the wastewater treatment plant for 20 hours a week to make sure that it's a seamless transition. And since you're the budget committee, I'll tell you that having 2 of us down there is still budget neutral. So,
You're actually down a position right now, right?
not including that position being down. The salary difference between the 2 of us,
Puts you budget neutral.
from what I made to what he is currently, because he's still on probation, pays for me to be on for 20 hours a week. In addition, there are some things that Rob hasn't done in the past, such as budgeting and some other things. So I'm helping him out in that transition period. So, I guess the first thing I'd like to say is that we did increase the budget 30% last year. But when I go back and look at it, a lot of that was due to the consent decree that the town had signed with the DEP. So one part of that was the capital reserve, which was just a little under $62,000. a contingency was a little over 15,000. And one part that wasn't part of the consent decree was the, depreciation, and the person who does our books suggested that it be 160,000, and we settled at 100,000. Those are three items that have never been in the budget. So when you take all that, the rest of the budget, including salaries and every other line item, was only a $25,000 increase on a budget that was over about $750,000. And we ended up the year in the black by like $43. And we did a tremendous amount of things. And we just got our last inspection in December by the DEP. And they were very happy with all that we had done. And we had no violations of our discharge license. So, and then the question came up about if you wanted to do a lot of capital projects to get us back online, what would it be? So what we've done right now is we went out for quotes on doing a new sea level rise resiliency study, and engineering, and that will also determine and be presented to the board as, okay, you can stay at the plant and here's what you would need to do if there's a significant deal with the sea level, or the alternative would be to move and what that would cost. So that determination needs to be made before you do a upgrade of the facility. And then in parallel with that will be a detailed evaluation of the pump stations and collection systems. So for a number of those, particularly the pump and the collection system, I don't even know how much those will cost. I have an idea, but I'm thinking, and it doesn't have to be all done in 1 year. My guess is it'd be probably a 3-year thing, and it could be somewhere. I think it's going to be in the millions of dollars because it's been overlooked for so long. Those pump stations are fairly old, a lot of them, and we know we have some areas that there is inflow when it rains hard. It comes into the system and we get a lot more water going through the system. We've located a number of sections that we'd like to camera to identify those at the beginning to see if we can figure out if that's where most of it's coming from and deal with that. So in the plant, we've come a long way, but the second part that I got for you is it lists capital projects, contracted services, equipment, and other expenditures. So what I've provided the same information to both the select board and I guess it's the comprehensive committee or whatever that does an outlook going further. So there's all sorts of you that want all sorts of information. So what I've told the board and what I'm telling you and telling them, these capital projects, I'm willing to do those for the time that I'm here part-time, because I think these will lead to ensuring that the plant has some redundancy and that you're not worrying every day of what's going to go wrong the next day. So there is a price tag for that. And the contracted services, that's for doing the camera work on sections that we believe we have issues. And then there's some other equipment that help doing better process control and some other things that we have issues. Under the other expenditures, the Main Street project, the board said they are going to put that on the town warrant as a separate line item, so it will not be coming out of the wastewater treatment budget. And then, and then there's Route 1. Next year, the DOT wants to repave Route 1 from the gas station out here. I forget what one it is, right past the police. So what's that one on the other side of Maritime or whatever that name is?
No, I can never remember the name of it.
Okay.
Little Mark's up there, Quick Stop here,
Yeah.
and I can't remember the name of it.
So out there to a significant
Angie North.
Okay, whatever, as long as you know what it is. And it affects about 23 manholes. So the projected cost of doing that is about $65,000.
Rick, is
So-
that the same report that you gave us last month that you're going from? Or is that something different?
I put the, no.
This is what you gave us last month, and
Oh, no, this is a newer updated, but this, right back. It should have been on your desk.
oh, is it under, there was nothing on my desk.
Oh.
Did you,
Right,
that's,
here, take that one.
well, then you know.
I got more.
everything.
I got more.
Sure.
Yes.
I don't know, did you get it?
And this on this.
Okay.
Do you have it? Does everybody else have it?
Is that what this is?
No, that's a more of a detail. Yeah.
So is that 65,000 for the manhole covers when they repave Route 1 above and beyond the 61.5?
Oh, that's a, yeah, that, no,
Same number?
same number, yeah, it's just, we went back and forth.
Okay. Just didn't know if it was an
No,
additional $60,000.
no, that's more than enough right there.
Okay.
So that's out there. And there's a thing that says 55,000. So basically what we did is we applied to the state, to the DEP for a grant. So we got a grant for up to 20,000 for doing a sea level rise or resiliency study. They are going to dictate exactly what the scope of work is, because they definitely weren't satisfied with the one that you just had done a couple of years ago. We also got $50,000 principal forgiveness for helping to do the engineering studies. So out of a commitment of 55 from the town, we can get up to $120,000 worth of services. So that's where that stands. Now, the first one that says custom budget report. So most of that, over on the right hand, the 2021 manager is what we're proposing. We have a little fine tuning to do, but part of my issue is
I'm sorry, I want to see what you're looking
The custom budget. The
Oh.
one that we printed out.
at. This one here. This one here.
Yes, that one. Yep.
Okay.
Nope.
I think we do. Oh, it's okay.
Just make sure. So I know when I came to the board last year, they were hoping that we could hold it at a 0% increase. So basically what I've done is I put it in with trying to keep it at a 0%. The only problem is you don't have anything for depreciation, basically, what it comes down to. But I would almost make the case is that the projects that you're gonna do in the next couple of years, that maybe you defer the depreciation for a year or two. I don't know any other way to solve it, because if you look at the one with the capital projects and the other stuff that I have here, if those aren't done, they're gonna move over to the next budget, and what's in the next budget's gonna move to the following year. And I I just, I don't know any other way to say it.
We've been talking about, I brought it up, a bond issue for all capital projects. And that way you're spreading it out over, you're gonna still increase taxes, but you're gonna spread it out over 20 years or whatever to catch us up, because every year we're putting stuff off and putting it off, and we're finally getting to a point where we've got too much to do.
Yep. The only thing is, the capital projects I have here, those really should be done now. Yeah. And what I was thinking with the select board is if they could, right now my thinking would be that in the budget that we had 100,000 for depreciation, that we say, okay, we're gonna spend up to this amount right now, and then put something out to the town to go to get a bond issue to kind of pay that money back. Because I've held off on the budget on doing anything more till we resolve some of these issues, because I'm not sure which one's gonna get the plant first. And then after you get the engineering studies, which will be a year later, then you'll know a better idea of what else you want to do.
Do we know what is in the capital improvement for this year? I mean,
Oh, you mean that was
what's
voted on?
planned? Yeah, what is planned for this coming year?
They're presenting it,
Yeah, it was, you're talking about the ones that were voted on in June, right? Oh.
You know, the public works truck was declined.
That's okay.
There's more of them
No,
than I
that's
thought.
right. Got it.
And the last section was more of a detail of why those projects were valuable to do at this time. And like I said, the Main Street project, they resolved last night that was gonna be the one for like 35,000 was gonna be a separate line item in the next town voting cycle. I know it's a lot to take in a short period of time.
You had mentioned the need for generators.
Yep.
Do you have that?
No,
Do you have that in there?
No, I don't. My guess, part of the issue is because we haven't researched enough to figure out, does the town own the property? Is there an easement?
Of the pumping stations.
For the pumping stations, okay. Well, there is a little about the generator because we're having an issue with the easement for pump station number 1. And we've gone back and forth and we have,
Which one
Yeah.
is that?
that's the one by Holbrook Pond. And I've advised the select board that they really should get the town attorney to read the easement. And if they agree with our understanding of that should, information be passed on to the landowner and that we move accordingly. Because since 2010, the DEP has been after you about generators. We have had 2 power outages since I've been here, and thank God they happened during a real non-busy time. We did have one overflow. There is no way that if you have Birch Point Road and Route 1 out at the same time, that you can drag those generators around and prevent an overflow. No physical way. They're all different, not one generator works for all of them. They're site specific. There's 2 or 3 that are one way and another 3 or 4 another way. And typically you're gonna have it when it's bad weather. The night we had it, it was fairly nice weather and it was late at night when there isn't much flow. So, and then it's particularly dangerous to be out at that. And who knows, the road might be blocked off and you might not be able to get to it. And a lot more people have generators now, so they can do stuff and create more flow. Yeah.
If that particular pump station has been notoriously a problem, I live on Old Bath Road, so I know which one you're talking about. That, you know, every time we lose power, you always see the generators down there. Why haven't we made that a place where we keep a generator? I know the town owns several of them,
We own 3.
and that be a spot where it's designed to.
Because there are 2 on Old Bath Road that have the same connection, and that's the only generator that, because those are 240 single phase, and there's a couple more in town as well.
I was gonna say, aren't they all kind of shared with other buildings too, or are they just the sewer treatment?
No, sewer treatment, although we, since the transfer station doesn't have a generator, we just had a connection put in up there, and we told them that until they get a generator, that what we do is if we didn't need ours, we'd come up and let them use ours. So,
675,000 and change,
That's-
almost 676,000.
In the
That was capital, came out of
That's-
capital reserves for, in the section in here that is labeled municipal capital improvement question.
My estimation, if we ended up buying somewhere between 4 to 5 generators, we'd be in pretty good shape. And my guess is that's probably somewhere around 125 to 175,000.
So that's on top of the 140,000.
Oh, did I put 140 in there?
Well, you've got on this priority items, you've got 140.
Oh, somewhere around in there.
So it would be on top?
No.
Oh, it's included.
Yeah, let me make sure
How many generators did you say, 5?
I'm 4 to 5.
I didn't see generators here, so it would be on top of this.
Yes.
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 What's the amount again?
125.
I'm thinking somewhere between 125, 175, because I don't know what the incremental cost of, I'd like to see an auto transfer switch so people don't have to keep running around, but depending on what that incremental cost is, I might have to not do it this time around. All I can tell you is I wish I had better information, but in 11 months, there's been a tremendous amount of stuff down there to do. And when I first started, I think for the first 4 to 6 months, I talked with the DEP like once or twice a week. So unfortunately, that kind of took priority over everything else. But
Can I say something?
sure.
I just wanted to address the fact that there are 18 pump stations in town, and they're spread out, not totally equally, but they're sort of everywhere. And there's no place in town that if there was a power outage for 24 hours or so, that it wouldn't be crisis specific. So Rick has addressed that in getting pump stations that most of them now have hookups so that a generator can be put there. And I guess often the power outages don't cover the whole town. The whole town doesn't go black every time. But nonetheless, the most critical ones are the ones as you get closer to the sewer plant. The sewage from the ones on the end are pumping to this one, and then it's pumping to the next one, and so forth. So some of the ones that we would love to have a permanent generator at are the ones that are closer to the sewer plant, because that's where sometimes gravity feeds it, and other times the other ones are pumping everything towards it. So of all the things that are on the list, and there's a lot of things, I realize, the generators might be the one that would be the most public noticeable if there was an outage, or if there was, God forbid, a hurricane, we have power out for days. Everybody would be looking to rent generators, and there would be a dearth of them. So that's why he has it high on the list. So just wanted you to be aware that we got them everywhere.
So basically what I'm thinking is the first 3 generators out on Route 1. So, the one at Holbrook Pond, the next one is across from the pizza place at Flood Avenue, and the next one's across from Grover's Tire, that's pump station number 3. I'm also thinking that the one on Route 27, because the community center is the,
Emergency shelter.
correct. Yep. And we do, there was a surplus, military surplus that's been at the plant for quite a while. I'm looking to take that down to the water district and placing that one there. So. And we continue to communicate with EMA about any surplus generators that they can find. There were some out to Washington State, but somebody scooped them up before we did, unfortunately.
On a minor note, as far as equipment goes, have you thought about replacement of the truck that you guys own? I'm not talking about the pickup, I'm talking about your top thing.
Your sludge truck, right?
Yeah,
We
the
put
sludge
a,
truck, because we've discussed that with Public Works. The top picks they're off the road pretty much everywhere. They're hard to get parts for. I know that the one that the not the transfer station, but your facility has is in better shape than some, because it doesn't get used every day. But in order to replace that truck, you're looking at $75,000, $80,000. And has there been any, I mean, that's a mid-90s truck. It's,
correct, we use it about once, we average once a week.
yeah,
Okay, we just put a brand new exhaust system on it. Everything else, we did some repairs to the bolting down to the frame and clean that up.
yeah.
So we just renegotiated the sludge contract because they have many more things the DEP wants from them. So that increased our tonnage. And at the same time, I did an evaluation that if they hauled it, compared to us hauling it, it was like twice as much. So a new truck's gonna cost a heck of a lot. So I think this truck, we take care of it, it should last 2 or 3 years, and then we have to figure out what we're gonna do from there.
Just keep in mind that you cannot get front-end parts from the top picks. That's one of the reasons why the state stopped using them. They just no longer, General Motors no longer is mandated to keep parts on the shelves for them. They are available, but they're harder and harder to come by.
That's why I did an analysis if they have to haul it for us.
Yeah.
Yep.
Another question, if we were to get new generators, what's the lifespan of those generators?
I would say that if you take care of them, probably 20, 25 years, because they're not gonna get a whole lot of runtime, except we will put them on an exercise cycle. And my preference would be to get propane-fired ones, because there's some issues with having diesel sit around for a while.
Especially during the winter months.
Yeah.
Grows bacteria.
Turns to slush too. I don't have anything else.
Yeah. Looks good. I just had one more question about the depreciation. You were saying you recommended not having it for the next few years, so then we could, some of these items. It seemed like last year was like required to have the depreciation, is that?
That was the auditor's recommendation, because it had never been done before.
Yeah.
But I'd make the case that based on what we'd like to do, as well as what the engineering studies are doing, you're gonna probably have a lot of new stuff. And so maybe that's where you, yeah.
Okay.
But would I like to have depreciation? Yes, I would, but, the bottom line is I think that's going to increase your budget, so it depends which way you want to go. If you want to have depreciation, then the budget's got to go up. Because, as I said, not only do I have projects we ought to do now, but then there's ones in the budget that's proposed, and then you even have stuff that's gonna come after that. So you're just pushing stuff down another year, and I wouldn't feel too comfortable with that.
This is all capital improvements. This page that we're talking about, your capital projects, this is all separate from your budget.
That's correct.
Right.
That's correct. So if those don't get done during this thing, then they're gonna go into the budget and move whatever's in my proposed budget would go to the following year. Perhaps,
Okay, so let me get this straight. You're saying if you don't get these capital improvements voted on, approved by the board, then you want to put them in your budget?
right, and the ones that are in my budget would have to go to the following year, which gives an interesting thing that maybe what I should do is provide you with the capital projects that are in the proposed budget. In
Well,
other words, the capital ones that are in here,
right,
those are a whole separate, right here.
okay,
Those are a whole separate list of things. And
okay.
perhaps you'd like to,
So this is a
well,
priority over what's in the budget.
that's correct.
then why would you be willing to swap them out if these are the priority?
No, those are
These are the ones that are priority?
No.
No,
that first list is.
okay,
These are the priority.
The ones that says first priority at the top.
okay. So then what I'm not understanding is why these are in your budget.
Because these need to be, as far as I'm concerned, these need to be done now,
Okay,
and then those would be next. But if you don't do these now, these need to go in there, and those need to go to the following year.
Okay, so these items are priority over what's in the budget. So they will be replaced with these afterwards.
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
So you're sliding everything down a year, basically.
Sure.
Yep.
Do you have an estimate of what, the revenue that comes in from the use of these?
We continue to monitor that to see if it's coming in for our projections. It's looking pretty good so far.
What's pretty good? What would you hope that it would bring, if everyone paid their bills and?
Well, that's part of it. Not everybody's paying their bills and stuff. I think when I got the latest one for Nice, that for the percent of year, the revenue is tracking right where we need to be. The thing is, some of that is seasonal, because more people are here and stuff, but,
This was from through November 30th, and you've got percentages up at the top.
yeah, but that's just an expense one.
Okay.
That's not the
We had
revenue
a
one.
sheet somewhere with wastewater.
Bruce's capital, we were looking at, is that the 61,000?
Yes, yes.
Question on your depreciation, is that, still trying to wrap my head around that, the tax thing. Depreciation, is that more like a contingency fund, that's to replace?
Replace stuff as time goes by, they figure,
You have to replace something and that you're putting.
right,
money in the
in other
bank for
words,
that.
certain things have certain age,
Right,
and so you're trying to put the value back in, so if you have to replace it, you have that fund. Did you find that?
No, I couldn't find it.
Oh my God, that's a whole different report. No, this ain't.
Yeah, it's-
That just came out.
Oh, but that's not.
This is right.
It may not be because the sewer is a separate entity.
Right,
enterprise.
they're enterprise.
What I can do is, we can get that report and I'll send it to you.
Well, that'd be great.
Yep.
Your real capital would be $377,000. 140,000 that you've got on this list, 175 for generators, 62,000.
Well,
I will say the budget's a little fluid as we go through and get some better quotes. And there's other things that we'd like to do, we didn't get quotes yet, but, you know, that's,
But right now, that's the only number we've got.
yes, right. Yep. And you still, and I don't understand why, but you took out, there was a loan taken out to do pump station upgrades. It was a bond that was taken out in 2016, and you pay 47 grand a year. And I think it had a 40-year term. Well, those things don't last 40 years. And maybe it was done to lessen the increase, but I think whenever you take out something, you really want to take a look at the life cycle. And
When was that done?
2016. So another thing that we're doing, at least that I like to do because I'm like a budget kind of person. So, let's see, what did I do now? No, I get a different spreadsheet. Oh, because that bond is paid in one lump sum in January. So and nothing's been paid, well, it'll be paid this month sometime. So what I did is I spread it out over the year so that I kind of reflect how we are budget-wise. Then the same thing with depreciation. They have not transferred any money out. So that 100K, nothing's been taken out to do that.
Right.
So what I've done is I get a separate spreadsheet that takes out 10,000, whatever.
1 month's worth.
1 month's worth, everything. And so then I compare that to my budget. So I'm trying to think in December we were 50% of the way through the budget year. And if I take those into account, I spent 52%, so I'm just a little bit over budget. But I hate to get all those bills all in one shot and not know where we're at, so.
So I guess my question about back to your revenue that comes in, I know at one time, and it's probably not that way now, but you were self-supporting, self-sustaining without these capital improvements or priorities or things that you need, but as far as operating costs and the revenue that came in, you made enough to pay for everything.
I
without
don't
the
believe
That's
that
not
is
that way anymore.
accurate. I
Well, that's
believe
why
there
I was
were,
wondering.
I believe there were times that it was,
Yeah,
and that before it was made an enterprise account. I may be speaking out of turn, but I believe at one time before you were an enterprise account, whatever was left over and wasn't spent went into the town.
it did.
And then at other times, you have been underfunded. And really, an enterprise account, you are supposed to, your user fees are supposed to pay the freight. But I think part of the problem is that if everyone knew exactly what condition the plant was, the monies that were turned back in probably would have been better spent doing some of these projects, 1 or 2 a year. Because a lot of these weren't a whole lot of money, but now that you keep deferring things, you're paying a bigger price tag, unfortunately.
poor management. It boils down to somebody wasn't minding the house. And I'm not saying the person you replaced, the town itself failed.
You know, I don't want to shed any blame anywhere else. All I want to know is to let you know what the condition of the plant is now and what it'll take to return it back to a good operating plant. And I know it's difficult for everybody. It's going to be difficult for you, different for the select board. But I think we've been over backwards to show everybody where the plant is, and then these engineering studies will help you see what else is going on. And the reason these capital projects I put on there, what you pay for me to do them as compared to an engineering firm, you're going to probably pay about 4 times as much, and these aren't very difficult projects. The other thing that's coming along is, in this budget, the disinfection season is going to be extended in the new license. And bisulfite does not like anything below 38 degrees, so we're looking at changing what we're using. There's a pilot program that's going on up in Greater Augusta. Going to look at that and see what to do. There's also another test that the DEP wants to be done during that disinfection, a whole new test. So that's some added cost.
Okay, well, thank you.
You're certainly welcome. Thank you for your time.
We have reviewing the December budget reports. So thank you guys very much for your time. Thank you.
Thank you.
For your time.
This is So I'm assuming that these are July through December totals, is that right?
I believe so, it'd be 50%.
50%?
Yeah, so it should be at 50%, I believe. Let's see what's on. My formatting doesn't come out right.
Line 301 capital, is that capital improvement? Is that what is that line?
301. Yes.
So I'd like to learn more about, I know when it was first established, they were doing like a long-term capital improvement. So in other words, they would have a plan, a 5-year plan of what they were gonna be. 1 year, they would be replacing this, then they would have something, so like, things like this should have been in that plan so that we're not here. But I'm just wondering, are they just looking at each year to see what gets replaced, or do they have a plan in place that kind of sets up what we're looking at for the future?
From some of the past meetings that we've had with the department heads that have been here, Sherry, the fire department, the police department, prior to, before you came on board, they had no plan.
But this is something that would come from the town. I mean, our investment team, somebody must have something.
They've had a plan in the past, but they've never followed the plan.
Right.
So it's,
That's
What
what
kind of-
It's like for example, with the fire department. The fire department is sitting in a situation right now that the ladder truck is no longer serviceable.
there's a lot, every department.
Well, I'm just using
Yeah.
that's
No, I know.
that's a major expense. You're looking at $1 million to replace the fire truck. There should have been money put away for that 20 years ago.
But there wasn't. But what I'm saying is, moving forward, that was why they did it. I mean, Ed Polovasic was on the select board at the time, and he was the one that kind of set that all in place. And the idea behind that was so that we would have a plan, and we wouldn't be looking at what we're looking at right now. So I think something needs to happen to get us closer to that.
What happened was, when it looks like you're gonna have a 13% tax increase, they're gonna say replace the police tax, well, we'll wait 1 more year.
The money shouldn't be coming from our taxes, it should be coming from the investment fund. That was what they were working
But
on.
I think what Bill is saying is they're pulling from
The
capital
investment fund to
improvements
take care of
to
it.
throw it at taxes so that they artificially depressed our taxes, which is what when you pointed out this 518, I
Yeah.
thought, well, why did I total up $675,000 in capital improvements? The difference between the two numbers is pretty dark, within about $800 of the last article, which was, shall the town vote to appropriate the unexpended balance of capital improvement projects totaling $157,007 to reduce the 2019 tax commitment. So I'm guessing, I just made one quick calculation, that that's the difference between line item, which say it was 301,
301.
and what was on the warrant that I totaled up. Yeah.
and they had taken over, there was leftover money in the capital expenditures, like anytime they were buying something, that didn't cost the exact amount, it was just staying in capital. And this past year, they took all of the remaining money that was in there and did it to offset taxes.
I understand that, but I still feel like, okay, so they spent 670
Almost 676.
So they are spending money on capital improvements, but there should be a plan,
Yes.
a 5-year plan of, okay, next year in 2001, this is what we're doing, I mean,
Well,
2001.
we talked about that last
2020.
week. We talked about that last week, saying that we wanted to, that was part of the reason we
Yes.
wanted to meet with them, with the board,
Mhm.
and department heads to discuss having each of the department heads put that together.
Yeah,
I mean, it has to start with them, I would presume.
we need to prioritize what needs to be done first.
They need to have some long-range goals.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So what is the plan for the investment?
I don't know. I
Well,
have no
They
idea.
can take so much.
The next
per
meeting
year,
is
right?
the 16th, am I correct? The 16th of this month at 4. I've got it written down somewhere, and I can send everyone an email. I've
The
never
next
been
one.
to one.
Selectmen meeting?
No, the next investment committee meeting. I had been trying to go to one, but hadn't held one in quite some time. So I do have it at home. And as a matter of fact, it may even be in the news article about last night's meeting. I'm not sure.
Is it listed on the,
Oh, it might be. It
What
might
page?
be. Be on the,
should be on the web
Agenda.
page, but also I think it's on the back, the end, last thing on the
Yeah.
agenda last night.
Yeah.
Is it up there, Bill?
Yeah, those are all just the
Oh, okay, I thought it was
Meetings
on
that
the
are-
16th of this month.
the ones that happen every month.
It's not this one.
Does the annual report talk about the investment committee? And its direction, or, I mean to get one of those, and I just want to get to the town hall to get one. It's all right, I don't have to look it up, I'll have to,
Don't see it listed. No, I do not see it listed here.
I do not see it on here.
So I'll send it to everyone. I know
Yeah.
I got it.
It's not on there, future meetings. That's, yeah. Okay. Guess we're all set with December
Yep.
for now, okay? Going forward, and this is part of it, was, last time we had talked about, writing a letter to the select board.
Excuse me, there's something I want to bring up.
Oh, sure.
In here, I'm trying to find it right now.
Oh, sure.
Um, ah, this sheet here, number 122.
122.
Planning and development,
Mm-hmm.
there's a budget of $28,700. What that is that's a borrowing at $57 an hour for 10 hours a week for 50 weeks a year, using the Lincoln County plan for us. And last time I looked in here, it was a $900 and something thing on it. And what we were talking about was we thought that maybe it was just they were late billing us. I was talking to Mary Ellen Barnes and saying that we did it this year, is it possible to do it again next year? And she looked at me and said, we never signed the contract. Because if you remember, this was on the past our group with the selectmen with one dissenting vote. It went to on the ballot and they got an overwhelming vote. And then the two planners quit with the county. Then they went and they hired one person, they hired a second person, and I just assumed that it was working. But because when they quit, and they quit before, this was supposed to start July 1st, they never signed the contract.
So what happened to the money?
Well, money's sitting there,
Okay.
so we don't have a part-time planner. So I asked Mary Ellen, could you check if it's possible to do it for next year? And I asked John, can we pick it up for the 6 months that's left on it? I haven't gotten any answers back yet. So I found out, so I just want to let you know.
the next part. Here. Okay, so the agenda we're talking about for the select board and requesting a meeting. I've heard back from the town manager saying that he would like to start the budget process, either starting as early as next week or the week after. I heard it was possibly trying to do Mondays and Thursdays, what was saying, let's vote about it.
They were talking Monday and Wednesday, and Jeff couldn't make it, so they talked on Monday and Thursday at 5 p.m., I believe.
Yeah. Did they say when it was gonna start?
No, they didn't, they were gonna figure that out. John, I talked to John today about it, because I couldn't remember if it was Monday and Wednesday or Monday and Thursday
Yeah.
to get that, and he said he hasn't figured it out.
Okay, so as soon as he does, he'll get back and then it's like a joint meeting, or we're ready to go. But part of this was for our agenda item for the select board to request a meeting, and one of the options was having, Bill had brought up having a bond to cover all the capital expenses that we currently need. But I think part of it is also making sure we, as Sherry mentioned, we have a plan going forward, so we're not in the same boat in a few years from now. And so Bill had done a great job of drafting up a letter. I think I just did.
Well, I think Zach wrote it.
I did not write it. Bill did an excellent job. I put my name on here. But I wanted to make sure that from our meeting minutes, we're trying to figure out how we wanted to do it, if we're sending it just to the town manager or the select board, or going to a town meeting, or if it could just be just us talking to them.
At the meeting, we talked about going to the town meeting, and I did it this way. This is a draft, it's not a final thing.
Yeah, draft.
Exact, but proper way is, because we're working for them, is you don't go to television and do something. It is to send a letter and requesting the thing. So that's why I did it this way.
Did we want to include some sort of an estimate in this letter as to what we've uncovered so far?
No.
Just to give an idea?
Have you read it?
I started to.
Okay. It just says that, been brought to our, it appears over the past years, the town has pushed back repair and/or replacement of capital equipment and projects, has done it out to hold the tax rate steady as possible and not put an undue burden on the taxpayer. However good the intentions, due to this strategy, we reached a point where we've accumulated a substantial and expensive list of requirements that cannot be delayed much longer. The longer we continue down this road, the more expensive it becomes. And the taxpayers have told us many times that they want to retain the services that the town provides. In order to satisfy them, we must invest, allergies in this room, must invest in the infrastructure of these services. For your consideration, we're offering the idea of pursuing a bond issue to eliminate this backlog of projects. A combination of issuing a bond issue and the use of some of the town's accumulated savings will allow us to accomplish this goal. Issuing a bond will increase real estate taxes. However, it would be a much smaller increase than putting the burden directly in the real estate tax. In order to make this successful, the town would have to use capital funds each year for repairs and replacements to keep Wiscasset from reaching this dangerous position in the future. With this in mind, we're requesting a joint meeting with the Board of Selectmen and the town manager to discuss this problem. As this is a compelling situation, we are hopeful that the members of the board will be available for a meeting. If not, we're willing to meet with representatives of the board and the town manager.
So
It
are
might
you
be a
anticipating that at that point we would tell them that we need?
Right now, it's kind of a moot point doing it, because we're gonna have it within a week or two, and we can just bring it up then.
And then I wasn't sure if we wanted to, like, not just this is an option, but other options.
I don't think it's a moot point. I disagree. I don't think it's a moot point. What we've got coming up is the budget process.
Right.
Yeah.
Taking this as a different line item and having even if it was for a half an hour meeting prior to starting the budget process with the town manager and the select board. And if we do our part and say, we would like this based on the information that we've collected, and if they say no, then it's on them, not on us. We've done what we can. You know, what we're gonna be expected to look at coming up is the budget for this fiscal year coming, not what needs to be fixed to avoid this mess that the town is in.
Another option also is using the money that we do have as collateral and getting a loan cheaper, I don't know.
Well, I brought this up actually at a meeting since I've been coming here, and I'm going to bring it up one more time.
Oh, one more?
One more.
Okay.
And I will bring it up every
I
promise.
It is, and I agree, and that's why I didn't.
I was gonna ask if that was a promise.
It is a promise. It's a threat and a promise. This is one good possible way to handle the financial situation the town is in. But that letter, that memo that John O'Connell wrote during last budget season addressed a dozen different approaches to how to handle spending and revenue. And I think that's the way it should be approached. I think this committee and the board needs to sit down and hit every single one of those bullet points. Because this is one good solution, but it's not the only answer to the problems that the town has. I sit here and I listen, I mean, wastewater treatment, that's critical to the town. That is absolutely critical. When we're talking about the kind of money that needs to be spent there, in the back of my head, I'm thinking to myself, well, the town, the taxpayers are shelling out $450,000 to cover the cost of running a community center.
Yeah.
That they are not bringing in the revenue. You know, I mean, we have to look at what's critical in town. And I'm not saying necessarily that we close something down, but maybe we need to look at all those other things. Are there other places that revenue can come from? Are there other places where we can save? And, you know.
But there again, is it fair that all the taxpayers in this town have to support the sewage treatment facility when it was originally designed that the users would pay for it? Why? I'm not on the system, nor will I ever be, because I can't connect to it, so why should we have to?
Well, I think the same can be said for the community center. I mean, it's the same thing, so, you know, people look at those different ways, but I'm with you. I think that there's a lot of stuff. We brought up other little things here and there, not at the dollar value that the community center does, but I think that the town needs to have a fundamental change of thinking about wants and needs.
And who is everything serving? You know, like I said, wastewater treatment, that is critical. Even though my house isn't on it, it's critical. We can't just close it down. Where else? What else is out there, regardless of the fact that voters say, I want this every year? We have a responsibility of looking at what does everything cost, and how can we, if the town wants these things, can we find a way to make it affordable so that we can have these things? And this is only one option.
Well, this is concerning only capital projects.
I know,
Yeah,
but don't we have to look at everything?
I think so. So maybe in the further consideration, if we put all of those options.
I think you call out John's letter and refer back to it and say, let's
Refer back
talk
to his memo.
You know, maybe refer back and say, listen, we would like to have a meeting to discuss this in addition to all the other options that are called out in the town manager's letter.
Do you still have a copy of it, Bill? Because I'll
She's
probably
got one.
have
I
it.
know
You
you
know I
got it.
have one.
I know you got it.
Yeah.
Can you email it?
Yeah, can you email it to us? 'Cause
I can scan it and
What it
email
was,
it to
so
everyone.
this, when they
First
brought
time.
the first budget in, and the selectmen told them to go back and take 2% off it, the letter he wrote to the department heads after that. Either increase revenue or look where, you know, delay maintenance or.
Yeah.
So,
Do you
outside
have
of this discussion,
I'm positive I did not, I'm positive I did not.
are they presenting their budgets to the selectmen as well?
Yes.
Yes,
So the selectmen are becoming aware of all the additional capital needs?
right now,
They
I'm
are.
presenting them to John.
And then John
So
presents
that
it
John
to
needs.
us.
Yeah.
We'll see on this one here.
If John's letter calls out, I mean, this is not so much short-term borrowing, but he does call out short-term borrowing on his letter.
One of these here, this is the manager,
Yeah.
he's cut this back, cut things back and so on.
Sorry about the crinkle.
No, I understand, I just wanted.
But the capital
Pick up
expense,
the
That
communication.
goes
Flow of
to
information.
a joint meeting of us and the select.
Yeah.
and the capital expense one, it's
Sounds like
very,
another copy bag.
it's pretty much, everyone submits things they would like for the capital expense, but they only have so much, the select board chooses pretty much what they would like to send to us for us to vote on. So a lot of times they're cutting things,
Gotcha.
because they don't want to either raise taxes or don't want to spend more than their supposed amount
Right.
from the things. So that's why everything's getting pushed,
We have a
pushed
pumper
back.
ladder there that can be used as a pumper,
Yeah,
you can't use a ladder.
yeah.
It's just you finding that these departments, through the meetings we've had, in finding the departments, they should have been looking at finding ways to earmark money in their budgets for future replacement of capital expense equipment. You know, like the chief of police being told that he has no money to buy police cars. Well, that's a replacement item you have to replace every couple of years.
Right, right.
And we've
Why aren't you budgeting?
We bought used police cars to other departments. We got, I think it was from New York State, where they get rid of it after X number of miles, and we bought that.
Uh-huh.
But it's only good for a year and a half.
Yeah, yeah. No, I understand.
Major liabilities when you start dealing with public service.
Sounds like the town could use its own capital committee to go through all of this.
Well, they had one
Oh.
at one time. That's why I'm just wondering what has happened with it. I don't know.
You mean the capital,
Comprehensive fund?
No, it was a capital improvement. It was to do with the investment group.
okay,
The-
well, and that's why I'm looking forward to going to that meeting. I get the impression that all they do is go, like, we sit and go over the numbers. I get the impression that that's what they do, but
And
I
it may
did
not
find
be
it.
what it was when it was originally set up. It may have changed.
Yeah, and they aren't meeting regularly now. And I found the email, it is January 16th at 4:30.
Oh. Over here?
4:30, yeah.
And the one thing I don't get a sense of, some of the people that, I talk with in town is maybe how, I don't think there's a knowledge out there maybe how dire the situation is. And, when I've gone to the ballot to vote on things, when I see like the budget committee has a 5-0, when the select board approved it, whatever, I've heard people say, well, they recommended, they approved it. So, I struggle with how do you get that information out to the taxpayers to get them to really understand that we're in a tight spot with the money, and it's just going to get worse unless you make some hard decisions.
The last few years, I have asked during budget season and when the warrants being put together, is there any sort of statement that can be put at the top of the warrant that gives people a sense of, and just off the top of my head, for example, if the entire budget is passed, taxes will increase or decrease by X amount, or if you have $100,000 property, your value will be, so some sense of it, and obviously, I don't know that you can do it on every item, it can maybe be at the top, and every year I'm told, well, there are certain things that can and can't be done with the warrant, but no one has ever told me, oh, we've looked, and that can't be done, so I still don't know.
I know the wording has got to be very precise. You can't have extra, because we used to try to get them to change. We wanted to have the revenue show what came in at the top of where the budget was, what you were voting on, so they knew the revenue that was coming in from each department.
I think they had that
They
last
do,
time.
they do have that.
They do now,
Yeah.
but they didn't,
Okay.
they wouldn't
Okay.
back then.
But that's what I'm saying. I feel as if this issue, and I'm not the only one who has raised it at select board meeting, no one has ever said, no, that can't be done. What they're saying is, well, there are certain limitations. So I feel like it's time for somebody to look.
They need to
because-
run it by
Yeah.
MMA.
Right, because it would be helpful to know.
Mhm.
Or a statement for every $100,000 or $500,000 of expenditures, taxes are, the mill rate is affected in this way. Something, you know.
Well, just look at, when you go vote, when it's a town vote, with warrant by warrant by warrant, how many people do you think actually sit there and really read those warrants?
Yeah,
I know, but a lot of people, so
I mean, not everybody reads the
it's,
select board minutes or the committee minutes, and so, you know, is it even possible to do like a townwide mailer to explain the situation in the town and what's going on, you know, to get more people knowing
Well,
what's going on?
I wonder where the local newspaper reporters are. They will come, but I typically to
Budget.
the budget workshops, and that's the place. You know, and
Because, you know, like I said, when I go and I see in the voting, and I looked and I said, oh, well, the select board approved, and oh, the budget committee approved, you know, and I didn't see any dissenting votes on any of that stuff, but that's at the very end of the whole process,
Yeah.
when they publish those, so it makes you think, oh, well, it should be good to go on the budget and stuff.
people that voted or wanted to be in there or done their due diligence and taken their recommendation.
When does the town vote on the budget?
June.
In June?
I mean, I think the last time we only had 440 people, I think,
Yeah.
yeah,
vote.
it was pretty small.
Yeah, 400 will vote for, what, 4,000?
Pretty much.
So are you gonna send the letter to the select?
Well, I was wondering if I should rewrite, or if we should add all the other options, or referring to John's letter in there, so there's multiple options rather than just one option.
I mean, I would like at least to reference it so that they don't think we just want to go and talk about the bond. I mean, if
Maybe
we want to
just
talk
put in
about
a
that.
reference that we'd like to talk to them about options.
Yeah.
But the
And,
one comment I would say is where it says that it appears that over the past years, the town has pushed back repairs and replacement. It makes it sound like they haven't done anything. And I mean, taking 175,000 and spending 600 on the capital improvements, to me, is not doing anything. I mean, to me, that sounds like they're pushing everything back, and they are doing some. They have done some capital improvements.
like what?
What she just read off.
It's mostly roads.
Yeah, you know, $200,000 of that is roads.
Mhm.
So that's a huge
That's not
chunk.
But it's
capital.
still part of the
That-
capital.
But that's what it's
That's-
coming out of.
Yeah.
I understand that, but that's not,
And
Push
and
back,
then,
that's maintenance.
there's a placement of many capital
Yeah,
expenses.
that's better.
Okay.
And
That's-
That's,
in addition to the 157,000 that, and I'm not fully clear on what the distinction is between these two, the unexpended balance of capital improvement projects, that was 157,000, but then there was also 117, almost 118,000 from capital reserve accounts that they just took out of there to throw at taxes. So right there, that's another $270,000 right there. 200 is for paving. Well, that's not a lot left to spend on other capital improvements.
but that's not capital
I
improvement.
know, that's what I'm saying.
That's general maintenance.
That's
of the
exactly
town.
what I'm
If
saying.
you're building a new road, building a brand spanking new road into a development, that's a capital
Yeah,
expense.
no, I'm agreeing with you.
But they've cut the budget from the road crew. So I mean, it's gonna be paid for somewhere. They cut the budget way back. I mean, through the years, oh my God, they cut it in half from when I was on the budget committee 12 years ago. So you have to pay the roads. You can't not pay the roads. So,
But I'm saying, all I'm trying to say is, let's lose the word game. That's maintenance.
Right.
That's maintaining. That comes
that's
out.
why it's under capital improvement.
Capital expenditures are things that cost substantial amount of money.
And have a useful life.
Right, they have in life, like one spending $400,000 or $500,000 for a fire truck. $1 million for a new ladder truck.
Well, not necessarily.
Those are capital expenses
Yeah.
because they have a lifetime expectancy. When you need to repave the old bath road or Willow Lane or whatever, that's general maintenance.
I mean, I think we're kind of getting to the other side.
Yeah.
I'm okay with if somebody's feelings are a little bit hurt because of how it's worded. The fact of the matter is,
Yeah.
we're at now because of maybe not the people who are sitting in the seats right now, but throughout the years, things haven't been maintained.
But it's not about feelings, it's about accuracy. I
Right.
think it's accuracy. That, to me, that's more accurate by saying many.
But I think after what we've heard tonight, just from one department, wastewater treatment, that it's been incredibly negligent. There are hundreds of thousands of dollars behind in basic maintenance. I mean, over the last year that Rick has been here, when you read, I know you've read his reports.
Mhm.
When you read those reports and you think, my God, they're racing some piece of equipment from here to here to prevent some horrible thing happening, it really has been deferred.
What's sad
But a lot of
is-
that wasn't brought to light until just this past year.
A lot of it was, a lot of it was actually brought to light, and a lot of people weren't informed about it, because it basically, it boils down to the person the person that he replaced was basically either told to retire, or he was going to be let go, because of all of the
I
things.
don't
I think
think
you're
it's
getting
a
off.
matter of, I don't think it's a matter
I'm not-
of.
Who, what personality?
No one's
But-
pointing fingers, we are just in a bind here, there's so much to.
All right, let me make a suggestion. Leave the letter the same as it is, I'm not finished. Put in the word many before replacement of many capital expenditures. Then, before the last paragraph, we can insert other expenses, et cetera, what you're talking about.
Other options? More expenses?
I
Refer to,
I'll send you this,
Yeah.
and he doesn't really have much of a title on it, but maybe if.
It's only bullet points.
Yeah, maybe if you just refer back to, the town manager's memorandum, he doesn't even have a date.
What do you want to say about it?
I would just say that we would like to, oh good, I would just like to say that we would like to have a discussion
I'm
of,
sorry, what are we doing with this?
pass it out.
Oh,
Okay.
I would just
I
like
thought
to
you were reading
refer
something
to
different.
that list on his second page, that we feel that, everyone last year said, oh yes, these things need to be discussed before the next budget season, and it hasn't been done. So I think it would make sense that as the budget committee, we suggest that this happen.
Like that.
I'll send it to you
Okay, but
with
what I'm
some.
trying to get at, I'm trying to get your point, because that does happen. That's been done in here, we've got the managers made
No,
things here.
what's happening during budget workshops is you're talking about the budget of a particular department. These items on here, things like, we just continue to raise property taxes, we draw on our reserves, we reduce spending further, we raise user fees, we reduce municipal services. I mean, that's a huge one right there. If we have that
All right, so
discussion.
you want to think that we should review these?
Liquidate, yes,
Okay, all right,
liquidate
I'll get it.
assets. Okay, so any and all of these should be a topic of discussion.
Okay,
How, because we can't just continue to raise everybody's department budget 36%.
okay, so I'll put that in before the last paragraph. Send it to him, muck around with it and send it out.
And then you send
You'll
that.
send it to us as well.
Yes.
I'll send everybody a copy.
Yeah,
All right,
that sounds good. And then I do think, like even for the bond, I think it's gonna be important for taxpayers to see how much it's gonna cost them, like the true cost of their services, because we've been offsetting it with tax, with capital improvements, as well as if we're adding bond too, that we're gonna be locked in for a long time. Maybe I don't know how they do it, if they do like if you're planning for a bond or something like that, plan a year ahead, so they take out how much we would be paying for the bond a year ahead, just so.
I'd love to have the taxpayers know how much it would be if we actually didn't go for a bond and you gave them 36% to get them where they needed to be, you did wastewater, how much would your taxes increase? 50%, I mean, how much would it go up? You know, maybe then they would look at it, maybe you have to cut this.
Going back on the thing about, I always thought there should be one beside each article. If this article passes, it will increase your taxes by.
But that's all articles, that's a shell game of trying, which is, which
Yeah.
passes,
Yeah, but
which
what
doesn't.
I'm gonna get at was maybe before the vote in the paper,
Mhm.
we put in an article about,
Now, that's something that we could do.
and everyone would see it.
And
Not just
see it and
people
say-
that are voting.
Right, and you see
And
it and
they bring
say,
more
I
people
actually,
to vote for
this is
or
what the
against.
town says I need for all our
Right.
needs.
You write an article, write a letter to the editor, put it in there.
Mhm.
I believe it's, like
And
half a
then the
million
town,
is
the town could put it on their website.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we gotta go like front page of the paper, this is what,
Yes.
get people's attention, you know? get
Well,
us-
that's down the
That's a
road.
good idea.
All right.
Okay, sounds good, I think, yeah, some things, as soon as we find out about the other meetings, we'll make sure everyone gets emailed, about that. Are we ready to adjourn?
I was gonna say, are you ready for a motion to adjourn?
I am very, I'm ready.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Next, second, all in favor?
Aye.
Yeah, perfect, adjourn,
I've got 8:03.
8:03.
Because I went over it and I said, oh, I do have something, but it's not approved.